Hey guys, sorry this video is late. I had to go to the school this morning to print some things, and honestly I had forgotten that I hadn't done this last night like I had initially planned to. So if you've already done this assignment, no worries. You probably don't even really need this video, but I want you to have it as a reference either way. So yesterday you watched a very long 45-minute video, or you reviewed the notes for that video. I'm never going to know either way which one you did. I just want you to have the information somehow, okay? And you should have turned in a document that had, I can't remember how many questions. I think it was 2 for slide 4, maybe 5 for the next slide, and then I can't remember for the last slide. But you turned in some questions, okay? You're also going to have questions for this one. And again, you should look for this. Look for this little star shape that'll tell you when to turn things in and what I want you to answer, okay? So for the first 2 questions for day 22, from what you know about the Odyssey so far, thanks to that lovely video, which honestly is a really great video, and we would have watched it in class and talked about it after, but we don't have that option, so I'm glad that you still got to watch it. From what you know about the Odyssey so far, what do you think your favorite part to read will be, just based on that video, and then why? So what part stood out to you the most as the most interesting, and tell me why? And then, does knowing about this story, knowing about the Odyssey, make you want to know more about the Iliad? And the Iliad was the Trojan War, right? It was that 10 years before the Odyssey. So does it make you want to know more about that? Why or why not? Okay? So the Trojan War, let's get a little bit of background information about this. So the Trojan War began when Paris, who was the prince of Troy, ran off with Helen, who was a Greek queen. So if you've seen the movie Troy with Brad Pitt and a bunch of other well-known actors and actresses, I think Orlando Bloom plays Paris, they run away because they're in love. In some versions of this story, he kidnaps Helen. Okay, Helen was the face that launched 1,000 ships, right? Let me see if I can write that down. Again, I know my pen makes noise. The face that launched 1,000 ships. And what that means is that she was so beautiful, she was so lovely that these two areas, that Troy and Greece, went to war over this beautiful woman. Greek troops, including Odysseus, traveled to Troy and fought to recapture Helen, her as Helen, okay, for 10 years. It was a 10-year war all to get back Helen. This is the Trojan horse. You guys may recognize it, or you may have heard that term before, Trojan horse. And you may have also heard the term beware Greeks bearing gifts, or gifts bearing Greeks. It's because the Trojan horse was designed as a gift from the Greeks to the Trojans. And they accepted it as like this peace offering. They brought it into their walls, and then the Greeks were all hiding inside. So they were all inside this big statue. And at night, when the Trojans thought they had won, they were celebrating, they had gotten really drunk, and they had passed out, basically, the Greeks emerged from the horse and killed everyone. So that's why it says the saying, beware gifts bearing Greeks, because this gift that bore Greeks caused everyone to die. Anyway, fun fact, let's move on. Epic heroes. Okay, this is a term that you need to be familiar with. The epic hero is not only the hero of an epic, like the Odyssey is an epic, but they have certain characteristics. So first, they always have to have at least one downfall, okay, or failing trait. Always, always, always. So if you have a hero that is perfect, they are not an epic hero, right? They have to have something that is a weakness or a trait that makes them undesirable in some way, okay? An example of that is hubris. Okay, which is excessive pride or self-confidence, arrogance, or a large ego. So imagine you're this really successful hero. It would be easy to get kind of a big head, right? To get kind of full of yourself, and that's hubris, is getting full of yourself, okay? You can also think of like, okay, Batman. Batman has lots of flaws, right? One of them is that he is probably a little bit damaged from the loss of his parents. He also relies on his machines and his tech a lot, and that could also be a failing trait. Okay, here's another thing to answer and turn in. This is an anticipation guide. We did one with Romeo and Juliet, and because we had to stop in the middle, we never actually got to go over it to see if your agree, disagree statements had changed by the end of it, and that really bums me out, but it's fine. So, I want you to answer these 4. The best travel, or the best trip, is one that is well planned and has no surprises. Do you agree or disagree? Okay, so you think that the best trip is one that is well planned, that you know every moment of the time and has no surprises. Agree or disagree? Number 2, good leaders are people who can think on their feet. Think on their feet is an idiom that means like if a problem is thrown at them, they can really quick in their heads be like, oh, here's how you fix that, and they can fix it. Number 3, fear is an excellent motivator. So that's like me saying, I'm going to motivate you to do well on this test by threatening to fail you from my class if you don't pass this one test. I'm going to scare you into doing well, as opposed to encouraging you or something else. So do you agree or disagree? And number 4, it is important to be able to adapt to changes. So this is a great question actually for right now, because we went from being in a classroom together every single day to suddenly a huge change, right? We had to adapt. We had to adapt to this change of, hey, from now on, you're going to be at school, at home, and we're going to communicate via text and email and video conference, and we're going to make it work, right? So it's important to be able to adapt to changes. Do you agree or disagree? And that'll go on that questions sheet on Classroom or on your own paper. Here's a term you need to know. And I'm going to say this wrong, medias res. Okay? It means in the middle of things. Okay? With many important parts of the action occurring before the point that the poem begins in. Many epics begin this way, and the Odyssey will begin this way. When we begin, it's going to be like, hey, let me tell you a story about this trip I was just on. And then the story, as he's telling it, is going to go backwards, and then we're going to come back to this place where we started. Okay? Many flashbacks are used. If you've ever seen a movie, and like the very first scene are the characters like sitting somewhere, maybe beat up, maybe tired, and they're like, man, that was a really rough day. And then they flash back to like something earlier, and then the whole movie is basically the flashback to that present time frame. That is this. That is in medias res. And I know I'm saying that wrong. I can never say it right. But the Odyssey does that. This presentation of events out of chronological sequence, which chronological just means like in the order, like what happened first, second, third, fourth, fifth. It achieves several goals. It immediately engages the interest of an audience who's already familiar with the details of Odysseus' journey. So if they already know the details, this is going to catch their attention. And it provides a narrative space for a long and evocative flashback later. So basically, it's giving you room to kind of move around in the timeline however you want, and it also lets you focus on the key points as opposed to just saying, first this happened, then 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 the end. Okay, this gives you wiggle room, so you can start here and jump back, jump back again, jump back again, we're at the end. Okay? So now we're going to look at some characters for one assignment that you're going to do after we've done all of our reading, and it'll be a few days before we get there. You're going to have to choose a character for something. So here's your introduction to our characters. Odysseus. And here's a picture of Odysseus shooting some people, which he likes to do. He's the protagonist of the Odyssey. He fought among other Greek heroes at Troy, and now he's trying to return to his kingdom of Ithaca. So that's where he's trying to get back to, is Ithaca. His wife is Queen Penelope, which, fun story, when I was in high school, one of my classmates, we had never heard these words out loud before, right? And he said, oh, is that Queen Penelope? Because it looks like cantaloupe. And for some reason, that always stuck with me. So now whenever I teach it, you can say Penelope, which is the correct way. Or you can say Penelope. I don't care because I think it's fun. And then so Odysseus and Penelope, their son is Prince Telemachus. Odysseus is a strong and courageous warrior. There's that epic warrior hero. But he's really known for being smart. He's sly. He's cunning, right? He can think his way through things really quickly, and he can make adjustments on his feet. Athena, who is the goddess of wisdom and warcraft, really loves him, and she often helps him out. You'll notice that with most epic heroes, there's usually a god or goddess or multiple that either love or hate them in some way. They have a really strong relationship with them, even though they're mortals. So Athena really loves him. But Poseidon, the god of the sea. Okay, so let's see. Athena is the goddess of wisdom and also warfare. And then Poseidon is the god of the sea. And Poseidon hates him. And we're going to learn why pretty quickly. But I mean, like, when I say hates, I mean really hates. Okay? Then we have Telemachus. So Telemachus is Odysseus' son. When Odysseus leaves for Troy, Telemachus is an infant. He's a baby. Okay? Here's a picture of him kind of as a child. It's the only one I could find. I don't know really what's going on there. So whenever Odysseus leaves, he's an infant. So it's 20 years later. So he's 20 when this story is being told. While Odysseus has been gone, all these men have been trying to marry his wife because they assume he's dead. So he, Telemachus, the son, is a natural obstacle to these suitors who are trying to marry his mother. Like, if he's around, she doesn't have to marry anyone because there's a male heir to this throne. His main quality is that despite his courage and good heart, he initially lacks the poise and confidence to oppose them. So he's really smart. He's brave and he has a good heart, but he's never had a father figure, so he kind of doesn't really know how to oppose these men. So we're not going to read this part, but this says his maturation, especially during his trip to Pylos and Sparta in books 3 and 4, provide a subplot to the epic, and Athena assists him just like his dad. Now, we're not going to read these books, okay? Everything that we're going to read, it's an excerpt. It's pulled from the greater Odyssey, focuses on Odysseus. We don't really focus on Telemachus that much, but just know that there is a spot dedicated for him in which he matures and comes into his own. Let's see. There we go, Penelope. So Penelope, or Penelope, if you will, is the wife of Odysseus and the mother of Telemachus. Now keep in mind, in these more ancient texts, women were not given much space, just like in Shakespeare, women were kind of treated differently than men, unfortunately. So she spends her days in the palace pining for her husband who left for Troy and never returned. Homer portrays her as sometimes flighty and excitable, but also clever and steadfastly true to her husband. So Penelope doesn't get a lot of screen time, but we're going to see that she is just like her husband, she's very smart. She thinks quickly on her feet. She's very cunning, and that's going to keep her from having to marry one of these suitors. And you can see here there's a tapestry behind her. That's going to come into play later. Next, we have Athena. So this is a statue of Athena. There are lots of statues to the gods and goddesses in Greek mythology. She's the daughter of Zeus. Fun story about her birth. One story that tells of her birth is that Zeus one day had a really bad headache, really, really bad. So he goes to Hephaestus, who is he was like the blacksmith god, and he says, "Oh, my head hurts so bad." So Hephaestus takes an axe and hits Zeus in the head with it, and his skull cracks open, and out bursts this fully formed adult Athena, and she's the goddess of wisdom because she was born from his mind, right? She's also the goddess of purposeful battle or warfare and the womanly arts. She assists Odysseus and Telemachus. She likes both of them throughout the epic, and she speaks up for them in the councils of the gods on Mount Olympus. We don't see a lot of this in the excerpts we're going to read, but it's good to know that she was on their side. She often appears in disguise as mentor. So remember our archetypes. She serves as a mentor for Odysseus, an old friend of Odysseus, and he's never even sure that it is her. She just disguises herself and then goes and helps him, and he doesn't even know it's a goddess in his midst. Then we have Poseidon, god of the sea. And you can see here he has a trident, much like in Ariel, the Little Mermaid. King Triton has a trident. Aquaman has a trident. They're all based on this trident and the Roman equivalent, okay? The suitors, the people that are trying to marry Penelope, are Odysseus's mortal antagonists. So they're the ones that are against Odysseus on the mortal realm, but Poseidon is his divine antagonist, okay? So really the Odyssey, for the most part, is, I should say Odysseus, my bad, is Odysseus versus Poseidon, okay? He despises Odysseus for blinding his son, the Cyclops, Polyphemus, and we're going to meet Polyphemus. We're going to read his story. It's actually the longest selection you'll have. It's like 9 pages. But I'm going to make some videos reading these to you so you can just follow along with me, and that'll get you the information. And we're going to talk about that at the end of this video. The reason that the journey takes so long is because of Poseidon. He's constantly trying to keep him from home. Ironically, Poseidon is the patron of the seafaring Phaeacians, okay? He's like their main god, and they're the ones actually who eventually help Odysseus get home. So, irony, fun stuff. Zeus. Zeus is the king of the gods, okay? He's like the big guy. And he's like the judge on Mount Olympus. He mediates quarrels and disputes. He sometimes helps Odysseus or lets Athena do the same, but that's really his biggest role. Then we have Polyphemus, and this is actually from a very old version of the Odyssey, I think, where the monsters were done in claymation. So this is Polyphemus the Cyclops. The plural of Cyclops is Cyclopes, who are known as uncivilized one-eyed giants. Odysseus lands on their island. Polyphemus imprisons him and his crew to try to eat them, and he successfully eats some of them, and they escape by blinding him. And in that, when they blind him, Odysseus makes Poseidon real mad, and that's what starts the Odyssey. So this is going to be one of the earlier stories that we read from the Odyssey, and it is very long, but it's probably one of the most important ones, because without it, we wouldn't have a trip. Then we have Circe. So Circe is a beautiful witch goddess, and sometimes, I think she's the one that is, no, that's Calypso, sorry. Circe is the witch goddess, and Odysseus and his crew land on her island, and their table manners, or their hospitality as guests, is dreadful, okay? They eat too much, they're messy, they're loud, and to punish them, she turns them into swine, or pigs, turns them into pigs. And then Hermes is the messenger god, okay? He kind of works with Athena to help Odysseus a lot. Hermes helps Odysseus resist Circe, and then, so Odysseus is not a great guy, okay? We need to preface with he's kind of a crummy guy. He and Circe become intimate, okay? We'll say boyfriend and girlfriend. And he lives with her for a year. He's kind of like a kept man, and she turns his men back into humans because of their relationship. Next we have Tiresias. So Tiresias, we'll see briefly. He's in the full version. You see him more. He's a Theban. He's from Thebes, prophet who inhabits the underworld. So Tiresias appears in all kinds of Greek plays and stories as this blind prophet. And in the Odyssey, he's already died. But Odysseus has to travel to the underworld. This is in book 11. We are not going to read all the books. Let me reiterate that. We're just going to read excerpts. He returns to Odysseus goes to the underworld in book 11 and meets Tiresias, and Tiresias shows him how to get back to Ithaca. Okay? So literally, like, you can see here he's talking to him. He's dead when he talks to him, which is fun. We also have Calypso. So Calypso is a beautiful nymph who is sometimes referred to as a goddess, who falls in love with Odysseus. He lands on her island as well. Ogygia, I'm not sure how to say that. It's not really relevant. Calypso's island. She lands there. He lands there. She falls in love with him, and she convinces him to stay. She says, "If you'll stay with me, I will give you immortality." So he says, "Cool," and he stays for 7 years, even though the whole time all he's saying is like, I need to get home to my kingdom. I need to get home to my wife. I need to get home to my kingdom." This is the second time that he has met a woman and been in a relationship with her. So for Circe, he stayed with her for 1 year. And Calypso, he's staying with her for 7 years, for a total of 8, and his trip was only 10. So only 2 of those years were spent traveling, okay? You need to know that as well. And then Hermes shows up again and says, "Hey, you really need to go back to your kingdom." And he's like, "Oh, man, you're right. Cool. I'll head on back." So this is your last thing to answer. Of the above mentioned characters, which are you most looking forward to reading about and why? So which character intrigued you the most, and which are you least looking forward to reading about and why? Which ones seem the most boring? Okay. So, for your assignment today, you'll turn in the answers to those questions. Monday, we'll be looking at some literary terms, and then we're going to start reading this. So, I've decided after talking to a couple people about this, I'm going to give you guys an option. So starting on the day that we start reading the text, if you do not want to answer the questions, because there are questions for each day of reading, okay? And they're marked differently than this, but they're marked. If you don't want to answer those and turn those in, instead, you will be responsible for logging into Google Meet at an assigned time to join in the discussion about that day's reading, okay? So I'm going to make a video for each day of reading. I'm going to share it with you. Then, on the day that it's due, you can meet with me in Google Meet. You have to show up. You have to stay for the whole time. And if you meet with me and we can have that discussion, you will get points for those questions as long as you participate in the discussion, and you do not have to turn anything in, okay? And I'll send out an email about it and a remind text, and I may even make a whole video about just that, because that's what I do, okay? But for now, answer the questions here. Those questions were these anticipation questions, these agree or disagree questions. So it looks like slide 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the last slide. And that'll be your assignment for today. Sorry about office hours earlier. I was at the school printing stuff. If you have questions, remind text me, email me, and I'll get with you soon. Miss you guys. Have a great day, and have a great weekend as well.